Good evening and welcome to the February 1st special budget meeting. Members of the public were provided with the following methods to watch and/or participate in this open meeting. Attend in person at the North Dumfries Community Complex, or attend electronically via Zoom to observe the meeting or to speak to an item on the agenda. You can also watch the live stream by accessing the meeting on the Township YouTube page. And finally, you can submit written comments to the Clerk's Division that were provided to council members and will form part of the public record. I now call the meeting to order, and can I have approval of the agenda, please? Councilwoman.
Moved by myself, second by Council Williams, that council adopt the February 1st, 2024 special budget meeting. Council agenda is presented with the following addenda. 6.11A, budget sketch paper number 6, 10-year capital forecast 2024-2033, NDCC Twin Pad Project / ACC building rehabilitation and chapter 3 lease. 6.13, budget sketch paper number 5, Cambridge Memorial Hospital grant, and 6.14, FIN 04 2024 to 2024 capital budget implementation.
All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I would now like to do the Indigenous territorial acknowledgement. We acknowledge the land on which we gather today as the traditional territory of our Shawnee, the Anishinaabe, and the Neutral people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. We offer this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples of Canada. And as I said before, we're meeting with Chief Ava Hill, and we're presenting the shirt to Bunny Vehicle for as the first Indigenous leader to hockey play. And the chief turned to me and said, "This is what reconciliation is. It is respect and honoring and recognizing the Indigenous people of our country. So we can pause and reflect for a few minutes." Thank you. Is there any disclosure of any interest in general material? Seeing none. Items for discussion. The draft 2024 budget book was released on December 11, 2023. It is available for the viewing on the township website. Christina Brooks, Treasurer Director of Corporate Services, will present an overview of the draft 2024 capital forecast 2024 to 2033. Christina, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a short presentation to start us off this evening, and then it will lead naturally into discussions with council on the annual capital forecast. After that, we will move on to the other regarding the outstanding items for the 2024 budget. But first, let's turn our attention to the forecast for the next years. I got the wrong one, I apologize.
It's okay, it's that kind of thing.
Okay. Now let's talk about the 10-year capital. So again, the goal of today's discussion is to provide an update on what the 10-year forecast looks like at this point, to facilitate a roundtable discussion on points that council may wish to discuss or specific projects, to identify any priorities or changing desires of council in regards to the project in the forecast, and to seek your approval in principle for the budget. One of the things I wanted to highlight is some of the changes that has come between the August and the first version of this release in January. So in August of 2023, when we last discussed the 10-year capital, Council passed a resolution that they wanted to do a major rehabilitation of the ice plant down at the ACC and to put in the gymnasium up here at the NDCC. So that was what was shown on the first version that was released in January. Now, at the last budget meeting on January 17th, council made the decision that instead of going with the major rehabilitation down at the ACC, they instead wanted to just replace the chiller and upgrade a few minor electrical issues, and that they would in fact like to pursue the twin pad. So as a result of that, we brought the twin pad back within the 10-year forecast period, and we have updated the gymnasium to be an adaptive reuse at the ACC, and it has pushed out further. So these are 3 sequential projects. So we will be first starting with the chiller down at the ACC. Then, assuming that we obtain the government grants, we will be building the twin pad. Once the ice rink down at the ACC is no longer needed, then that is when we would go ahead and redesign what that old rink would be used for, whether it's a gymnasium or some other thing of council's choosing. Other adjustments were made as we got further market updates on the actual project. When we had better understanding of the numbers, projects were tweaked so that it more accurately reflects the cost. The closer we are to the cost, the better our certainty is. The further out in the 10 years, we are projecting forecasts of inflationary factors, and that's where the numbers may or may not be 100% accurate, as our assumptions over inflation may or may not match reality. The actual total campaign has actually decreased from the version in August, and the main driving factor behind that really relates to the twin pad. Staff has been doing significant value engineering on that project to bring the costs down, and that's what helped drive the overall decrease in our capital program. Again, the 2 items that are where we're spending the most of our funds over the 10 years are on our infrastructure projects and then our facilities. The other thing I want to highlight for council is that this is a really aggressive campaign. We have a lot going on in the next 10 years. When you look at the reserves, there are years where it drops below $10,000 in some of our reserves. So we're really utilizing all of the money that we are collecting. And in fact, in the later years, while council's decisions right now are to put money into reserves, to build the reserves and spend it as needed, in the later parts of the years, we're actually spending those reserves money in the year we're raising them, which is almost going into that taxation dollars in that year for capital. So that is something to be considering as we move through the 10-year period. The other factor in here is we are increasing our reliance on development charges. There are a lot more projects in here that require development charges, and those project costs have gone up. If our understanding of when our growth is coming in versus when the project happened, it doesn't meet our forecast, we may be looking at debt financing to get us through that period until we collect this. There is no new debt in 2024. And in fact, this building's debt will be fully paid this fall, so we will be debt-free as of November of 2024. But a significant amount of our projects are going to require debt financing in this 10-year, and we are going to be back in a position where by the later parts, we will be spending almost $900,000 on repaying this. This is just a pie chart that shows you, again, where our funding, where our expenditures are going towards capital. Our largest part is, again, on facilities, followed by our infrastructure. Those are always our 2 largest sectors, and they shift from project to project depending on where the costs are increasing or which project we are doing, but it's hovered around that 40 and 35%. Then you'll see that the smallest portion is related to studies and equipment purchases. Our fleet has increased to 13%. Again, hybrid vehicles are a little more expensive, but we have pushed out how often we are replacing them. We did that in the August campaign, so that again has helped us a little bit. And then improvements to park trails makes up the remaining sectors. This chart will show you the source of funding and financing. And I say funding and financing because debt is not actually a funding methodology. You still have to pay for that debt, so it is more of a financing tool. And the reserves in here are mostly funded through taxation. So again, that taxation comes in and goes into reserves, and then we finance it by our own self putting away the funds. As you can see, and if you remember from the last time you saw a chart like this, our taxation number has increased, and that's really because of the debt repayments. But we are very fortunate in this township in that we have the income from the Grand Ridge Energy corporations and the aggregate revenues. And I agree, there are issues with aggregate, but over the course of the 10 years, we are looking at 8.6 million from aggregate and 3 million from Grand Ridge to help fund our capital projects. And if we didn't have those sources of income, that would probably have to come from taxation. This is a slightly different slide than I've shown you in the past. This actually highlights the 3 issuances of debt that we are projecting will need to be done in the next 10 years to fund the capital. And they are for the Twin Pad project, the phase 2 of the Public Works Depot, which is the, I'm gonna say the wrong word, but for where the vehicles are, the vehicle bay, and then the adaptive reuse at the ACC. So overall, we will be issuing just over $11 million of debt to fund this program. And then you can see in the lower half, that shows you the annual repayments. And at this time, we are projecting to repay all of those funds from taxation. Again, I just want to highlight that that annual debt repayment is actually a combined principal and interest number. That's all in. That is what we have to pay every year from these debts. And our 2023 annual debt repayment limit is actually $2 million. So although the number does increase in the latter half, we are not near our debt repayment limit. So staff are really seeking from council direction as to whether or not there's any projects in this 10-year capital that should be dropped out, whether anything should be changed, whether we should change the scope of any of these projects, whether there is different priorities you would like to see in terms of changing around the timing of them, or whether there's other projects you'd like to see put off until we define government funding, or just any other projects that need to be added. And I'll finish my presentation, then we can have a discussion. I just want to highlight again that there are 2 projects that we have been talking about for the last year and a half that are not actually in the 10-year capital. And that is the Ice House master plan for that redevelopment of that entire area. We have not, that's still undergoing study, so we don't have a final plan for council yet. And then the other one is the Nith Bridge rehabilitation. And again, seeking some direction from council if they wish to consider that or whether we wish to leave that alone for now. That brings me to the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Is there any members in the public who would like to speak on any issue? I think that's you.
Yes, I'd like to, if that's possible. Just a couple of quick points. My name is Michael Clay. If you recall back on November 30th, I made a delegation to council on behalf of the CCG, the Technical Community Group. Just want to commend first and compliment staff for reading budget discussion note 4 and then 6 later. I think it reflects very well what we were all talking about at that point, and fits all of the recommendations that we are, most of the recommendations that CCG had put forward. Just wanted to make a couple of minor comments. When the ACC fix happens to the chiller, just remember there's a second part to that, and we don't want that to be forgotten because we want to make sure it's a dependable place still to play. There's Scott Martin had identified a number of risk mitigations there, small dollars, but potentially big impact in terms of maintaining the ice. So remote monitoring, changing to a variable frequency motor, that type of thing. It's not it's not, I think, a capital item, or it's not a major capital item in the budget, but it is something that we think really has to be, to be thought of. The second issue is that when, notice the, community donations portion was $2.5 million in 2026 for the thing. You recall CCG is saying $700,000 there already, so you've got a really good starting point to go. But the second piece of my recommendations from the last meeting was that we should engage in an assessment of capital fundraising, community fundraising campaign. Because the success that we had back in 2009 timeframe was largely based on the fact that we had managed to take on a company called Campaign Coaches, which helped us put together the campaign. They actually went out to the community, figured out where the money was and how to go about getting the money. It helped us to manage the campaign that raised the $2.2 million at that time, which in today's money would probably be close to $3 million. I think just a reminder that don't forget that piece of it, that should start happening sooner than later. I don't think you can do a fundraising campaign until you're actually making a commitment on the facility, but I'm sure we'll get a lot of community support. But don't assume that it will just happen easily. It takes work. Since I headed up the chair of the personal business donations committee that did most of the groundwork, I can tell you it was a lot of work. It takes effort and it takes time to do it right. So let's not forget those two pieces. Finally, I think it's great that the numbers that have been run, how it's been done, that there is a substantial margin now against the annual debt repayment limit that currently exists. That probably will expand over time as well, so that leaves you with some leeway. But I think the other piece that maybe a cautionary note, when we talk about property tax increases, we have a lot of development that has just been happening, is happening, it's planning to happen over the next 10 years. So that means the actual property tax assessment base grows. So when we look at the fact that a lot of this will be funded in a lot of the planned the major capital items, not just the NCC, will be funded by property taxes. Remember that the base will be growing, and that so the actual amount of property tax increase percentage basis will be considerably less than it might look like if you just look at today's base. Okay, so just comments that coming from the CCG that we should consider. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other questions, anyone? No? Okay, Christina, I guess we're back to you.
Madam Mayor, that was the end of my presentation, so now I am at questions. If people have any questions on any of the projects or schedules.
Councilors. Councilor Jones. And tell us what you're doing. Do you have numbers?
Okay, so I've got some things that don't relate to the ice stuff. Should we just handle those first and then get back to the agenda ice fine, or what, how do you want to handle? All right, thank you. All right, on page 10. So this is a question, Julia just had regarding, I was just wondering if you could clarify which one of these items are gravel road improvements. I know we've got quite a bit of it in our countries, and the roads themselves are sometimes very difficult to maintain, and I would like, I know at one point we were talking about, see, there's a way to turn some of these gravel roads into asphalt roads, and so I was just wanting to better understand that.
CEO, no?
Madam Mayor, through to Council Williams. Gravel roads are being dealt with in two different fashions. One, as part of your annual operating, there's an earmark of $60,000 a year in the operating budget to start building up our road bed in our various gravel roads. Two reasons. One, to improve the gravel quality and depth so that as we grade the road, there's actually gravel to grade and properly crown the road so that surface runoff can move toward the boulevard and the ditch system. The other component of that is it starts building up the road bed. So when we do schedule them for hard topping in the future, we're working from a more substantive bed profile, which should assist in lower overall capital costs, turn them into hard top roads. Generally speaking, based on the current kilometers of road and the annual budget allowance, you're returning to each granular road on a 6 to 7 year cycle. And generally speaking, we're adding 4 to 5 inches of packed granular with each pass on that annual. In terms of actual gravel roads currently identified that will migrate to a hard top within the 10-year period. We have significant sections of Brant Waterloo Road. So you have Brant Waterloo Road at Swan Street, all the way through to the east where the existing asphalt surface starts, which is about a kilometer approximate west of Sprague's. You've got the 2+ kilometers on Reedsville Road between Wrigley Road and Brant Waterloo. And you have Brant Waterloo Road from Swan Street to Trust. Generally speaking, that's an approximate measurement. That's about 7 to 7.5 kilometers of the granular road system turned into an asphalt surface. You have today approximately 23 kilometers of granular road in your current inventory. So approximately a third of the roads in the 10-year forecast would be project.
Council Long and then Council Tim.
Madam Mayor, just for clarification through you to the CAO. I'm not sure, but did council actually vote on changing all of our gravel roads to hard top roads? Then I know one time we were talking about alternative, some alternative measures such as, tar and chip and that sort of thing. So have we actually voted on turning every gravel road into a hard top road? So I'm not aware of it.
See you on the hearing.
Madam Mayor, through the Council Rowland, there has been no formal resolution adopted by Township Council in that regard. However, you have gone through 2 iterative versions of the state of the infrastructure of roads. The first was in the year 2016 and the most recent was in 2021. In both reports, there was specific chapters and comment directly related to the state and condition of our gravel roads and the need to make improvements to those gravel roads as it relates to within the depth of the granular, crowning the roads and improving the surface drainage off of the roads so that they can perform and function better. So we have addressed that through the increase of funding through the operating budget to perform in that regard. We also, as part of those 2 reports, modeled existing traffic pattern and projected traffic pattern attributed to growth and/or changes in commuter patterns. And the road systems that I identified that are slated in the 10-year forecast to go from a granular surface to an asphalt surface will witness exponential increase in vehicular traffic as the growing population tries to migrate to a series of east-west, north-south alternatives to leave the village of there and go to places of destination elsewhere in North Dumfries or peripheral to, North Dumfries. And so understanding the implications on a maintenance aspect, whether it be dust application or running of roads because of the increased traffic, that's why they have migrated to an asphalt surface, recognizing, I'll use the word, the wear and tear caused by the extra traffic, weight of the traffic on those grade roads.
Councilwoman Bell.
Mayor, just as a follow-up, I just want to, in the absence of Councilor Optional, I'll ask a question. The way elephant in the room that is asked every time is about Hope Street, because I know every year we get an email from the residents of that little tiny street saying, when is it going to be paved? It's the last remaining gravel road in the settlement area there. So perhaps staff can give me an idea of when that's going to be addressed.
CEO McNally.
So, Madam Mayor, Hope Street in itself is not identified as a specific project. However, it can be captured within the annual road improvement budget. There is an issue with Hope Street in terms of property ownership of aspects of what currently has been traveled as Hope Street. And there is potential for quite an extensive reconstruction because portions of the current travel portion of Hope Street is literally offset from some adjacent buildings by a margin of 3 or 4 feet. So if we're going to make the capital investment on Hope Street, then the intent would be to properly position Hope Street within the road allowance. And there is the potential of acquiring land from an adjacent landowner so that it truly forms a crescent. If you were to travel that road today, you would think it's all public road. Portion where it enters into Scott Street is not part of Hope Street. It's actually a private driveway to an adjacent property, but it reads and looks like part of Hope Street. So if we don't are successful in acquiring those additional lands, then we have to look at some form of cul-de-sac, hammerhead, or whatever, because fire apparatus, garbage trucks and the like, it becomes an issue in terms of their ability to negotiate safely in that area. So there are issues with Hope Street, they're not insurmountable. Work has not been undertaken in terms of any design.
Councilor Terry.
Through to CEO as well. Just in regards to the comments made last year during this process of the budget was the mention of the gravel material in Ward 4 and the distance that the trucks have to drive to Ward 4 to do that from the works, excuse me, from the works yard. That I understand that would be a motivation to try and keep a cost efficiency from, I mean, especially during the rainy and poorer seasons of the year where the roads being washed away. Is that a motivation to try and, like, I thought that was gonna be one of the reasons why we were gonna do that sooner than later, but I understand that you said in the 10-year forecast, we're gonna be doing a third or for approximately a third of these gravel roads. Is that the priority there, or is it the priority just anywhere that's more identified as a higher travel or higher issue roads?
Madam Mayor, through to Councilor Kelly, there's a series of factors. So referring once again back to the state of the infrastructure report, I'm going to focus on the 21 era document. Sorry, the 21-22 era document. There were a number, if I focus exclusively on Ward 4, there were a number of asphalt roads that were identified as being in poor condition. Those are, for the most part, more heavily traveled, or there's significant variations in topography that lead to erosion, and they were in poor condition. We have quite a backlog of hardtop roads that are requiring improvements, and in the scheme of things, there's limited capital dollars, And we put our priority on terms of addressing those higher travel roads, higher speed roads in Ward 4 to bring them into a good condition.
Councillor Snow.
Thank you. And that is actually part of the reason why I asked is the actual asphalt roads, through town proper and in some places I noted it, the not so newer parts of Clyde, I did see that, the roads are degrading to the point where, and I believe they were marked as, an easier color more than the actual identifier or the label, as red roads in that area. So I would think if they're in red, that they would be done in the 10-year time period. So that's why I was asking.
So Madam Mayor, through the Councillor Kelly. So red was rated at the core. And, starting in 24, there's a series of roads specifically in Ward 4, and we are working our way through the red colored road system. And there's 2 or 3 years worth of working away on that inventory so that those higher order asphalt roads, higher speed roads that are in a poor condition Ward 4 are properly.
Councillors, would it be fair to ask staff to bring that report, reminding us of what the road conditions are and how they're rated and which direction to go? Outside of budget, and the council meeting. See, Councillor Tilly.
So yes, and actually, just because I obviously the only reason I'm mentioning Ward 4 as much is not that I don't believe that Wards 3 and 2 to 1 don't have the same issues. I don't see them as often, so it would be good to see what areas are becoming the bubbles where we know, and I've heard from residents that live near me, one is this road being done, or this road has this issue, and I brought it to CAO's attention that there's a little speed bump that goes across from some sort of drainage ditch on Queen Street in Brampton, and that is not something obviously that we can't live, but it does cause complaints. So I guess all those things would be would contribute to what we do decide as a priority, or actually staff decides as a priority, because we don't choose the roads to do, the staff decides which roads they're doing.
Yes, and to be fair, the councils have not seen the roads report, not the study in 2016, or they have seen the report, but maybe a review of what's happening would be nice. Okay. Any questions in regard to the budgets? Any further questions? Go ahead, Councilor Rose. You know who's going to hand up there.
Thank you, Madam. So my next question is with regards to, on page 13, with regards to funds. And I was wondering if we could add an entry for, Riverside Park in the 2028 or 2029 time period, just so that we know not to forget about this lovely park and the lovely neighborhood that the people live in.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Councilor Rose.
Is that, is council, I'm proposing to be on that, so.
So you're on page 13.
Correct, and we have lots of park rehabilitations for Brampton and grounds and stuff, and that's awesome. And I was wondering if we could also add Riverside Park to the list in like 2028, 2029 timeframe, so that would be after all the other parks are.
So you're saying anywhere between 2030 and 2030?
The 2028 and 2030 is fine, but whatever. I think it needs to just be on our list, because it's one of those things that is easily overlooked, because it is a bit of a challenge, but the people there do have a park, and when we get around to it, we should definitely add it to it.
CEO McNeely?
So Madam Mayor, through Council Williams, but also through you as chair. So a couple of things, just so everyone understands what Riverside Park is. It's off of West River Road, just south of the Footbridge Road, and behind the church. The township owns approximately 2 acres of land on the side of the hill. We cut the grass 24 times each season. There is no play apparatus on it. Approximately 1 acre is open grass, and the other approximate 1 acre is part of the lot. If you continue to climb the ridge of the old Grand River Bank. So that's the property by description. And, as I said, there is no infrastructure on the property. It's not even signed. We have our driveway situated to the north of the church. As I said, it's just open grass. So from a procedural perspective, if we wish to add that project to the capital forecast, council at the end of the evening would adopt a resolution adding Riverside Park, and I'll use the word redevelopment, with the time period and the target budget allowance to complete that task.
So through your permission, Councilor Jones, I will ask the clerk to create a motion that you will move, and Councilor Jones, you have a question.
Before, we'll go ahead and moving on this, but I wanted to ask staff that they would also consider the report to declare that land, to declare that property surplus, so we can sell it. I don't see any point in having that Riverside Park. I think we should look at getting rid of it, taking the land and selling it off, and then somebody build some housing there. Maybe the church wants to build some affordable housing there or something. But, I think we should seriously look at that land declared surplus. We haven't used it, it's like using it for cutting grass. Residents obviously aren't using it, so I think we should look at having it declared surplus.
CEO McNally.
Madam Mayor, if I could indulge council not to move forward on that aspect as we speak today. Only because I actually have an in-camera report coming to you on the 12th of February dealing with that property. And I'm presenting a series of options for council's consideration and correction. And that may shed a lens or a light on the ability to have a park facility in that district.
Thank you, CEO McNally. And if I may, at the town hall meeting that we had at the church there was between 30 and 40 people who all wanted the swing stuff brought back. They take their grandchildren there. They said they used it all the time and they were so disappointed in the state. So we'll wait to see the report, CEO McNally. Is there any other items? Councilor Tilley.
Similar to Councilor Williams' request, there are a couple of projects that are potentially available to the Brampton residents. One was the reopening of a conversation or of Councilor Ritchie's concept of a footpath or a walking path through Brampton on the old railway. I was talking to the owner who owns the majority of it, and he's open to the idea. And I know the CAO is also, we've had a brief conversation about that when we had the town hall down there. I'm not looking at obviously something that happened this year, but I mean, it's potentially possible to put a concept or even the idea of supporting that through there and what it looks like and looking into that a little bit for the future. That would be one of my two requests.
CEO McNally.
So, Madam Mayor, due to Councilor Tilley, staff did have a series of discussions with that owner about prior to the pandemic. So I'm going to say approximately 4 years ago. We actually have a concept. We have costing. We had annual costs to maintain it, and we thought we had framework in place. And the owner then wanted.
CEO Councilor Tilley.
When you say more like you mean dollars or, okay. Yeah, I didn't discuss finances with him in regards to that, but I did speak to him and he said he was open to it, and I think he sees it as, but I'm sorry, I'm making assumptions, so I didn't discuss dollars with him.
So at this point, CEO McNally, if you would reach out again to the owner and see where he is at, we won't add it to the capital forecast yet until we find out how receptive the individual really is. Any further, your second one, please.
So the second one is one that the CFO and I did discuss this fall, was the Brampton Forest, the one that's owned by the Land Trust. I was speaking to Mr. Paul Eagles, that there's potential that might be an opportunity for us to engage in some opportunity to actually do that. And I'd like to, sorry, and I know we haven't had that meeting yet or that conversation yet. But I suggested that as a possibility that we could do that. And again, it's just earmarking something that is long term, so it's not a spontaneous reaction, just something that I know that residents would appreciate.
Can I ask that this be put on the possible next look at the 10-year capital forecast once we have more information on both situations?
So Madam Mayor, in response to Councilor Kelly, I have not spoken with Mr. Eagles or members of the executive of the Land Trust. If that opportunity did become available for the township to take ownership of those lands, we would have 2 points of entry into the forest block and the trail, or something similar was to be pursued. One would be the intersection of King and Albert. We have that open road allowance. This would be on the south side, King. That would enter into the block, and the other would be the Cranston Park itself. It's a commanding forested area. It's a significant environmental asset in the village of Brampton, and to some extent, we almost mimic what we're trying to do in perhaps subdivision with the adjacent woodlot that the township owns as part of the Browns Community Park. So, Madam Mayor, I think it's appropriate council to provide direction that as part of the August 2024 consideration of the 10-year capital forecast, of those 2 items be returned for discussion with council, and in the interim period, staff would truth out availability of land, because that's the key thing. And then the second is what could occur on one or multiple land holdings, projected costs and capital and operating, and then council can decide on as whether to carry them into capital forecast and what time period within the 10-year capital forecast.
Thank you. Any other comments, councilors? Councilor Reynolds?
So I have, so on the last page 14. So one of the things that happens after this year is, by the end of this year, the 143,000 is no longer going to be paid. And so maybe this is not something for the capital budget, but I was thinking for 2024, 2025, if we might want to create a reserve for MDC to impact ACC renovation and whatever, and put that amount into there so we can start saving that stuff around. That was my thought.
No.
Madam Mayor, through to Council Wills. In the very early period of time when the debt was started for the NDCC back in 2011 until about 2018, it was largely funded through the property tax base and energy fund reserve. Project was actually eligible for development charges. And so that was a growth-related project. So it was sort of split between tax-funded, community benefit existing, and growth-related. So the back end of the cycle through to the end of this calendar year, the retirement of the debt, it's actually funded out of development charges, recreation. So we have no dollars, for lack of a better term, to reallocate to another reserve account because it was targeted for the NDCC like we know today, and that obligation expires in November with the last installment of principal interest.
Valiant. Any further ones, councilors? Councilor Tilly?
It's actually, it has to do with all, I guess, when looking through it, and I know Michael had mentioned this, as we are understanding that our tax base is going to increase over the duration of time. But looking at this, it makes me nervous to see that in 5 years, our taxes are going to, and just, it's more of a question, but it's also seeing what's written here, is that literally all our taxes are going to at least double, if not in some of the cases like the infrastructure go 10 times the amount by 2033 for taxation. Is this taxation that's also covered under, monies that aren't going to be just added to our property taxes, as residents, or is this coming through another method?
Ms. Grouse.
Through your Madam Mayor and Council Tilly, yes, the taxation number would be a combination of tax rate increases, which would impact the existing resident, but it would also be a factor of, as we get new assessment in the community, they start paying taxes as well. So it is both our growth and our current who would be paying that. So it's not that you would take today's tax rate and just double it or triple it. No, no, no. There is more assessment coming in, so that would offset any tax rate increase.
Sorry, when you say assessment, meaning like the properties we currently own are worth more and therefore would be taxed at a higher rate, okay?
No, through Madam Mayor and Council Tilly, I mean, when a new subdivision goes in, that empty vacant lot now becomes 20 or 30 houses, each has their own assessment. So all of those new houses would be added to the assessment roll and they would start paying the same tax rate that you pay on your property. And that's where a lot of our growth and assessment will be coming from as we develop.
If I may seek, Council. So this year at Regional Council, our tax rate was 9.8%. But because of the assessment growth, it dropped down to 6.9. So as the assessment grows, let's say if things stayed as they were, yeah, you probably get a 23% tax increase. But with the growth and with more people paying into that, saying we owe 10 million, but we don't have 100 people not paying that 10 million, we have 500 people paying. So it's spread over 500, 500. Would that be fair? See, okay, go ahead, correctly.
Madam Mayor, Rudy Council Kelly. The other thing to remember is we took a very conservative, small c, conservative position as it relates to senior level government funding. We only put 50% for the capital build of the NDCC as a revenue opportunity. If I look back when the NDCC was constructed in the 09-10 time period, it was closer to 67 cents on the dollar. So obviously, if we're able to attract more senior level government funding, it reduces the debt component proportion. Because I think we're generally where we need to be on the fundraising component. So anything that we can get for senior levels of government above that 50% lowers your debt exposure.
Council Tilly and then Council Rose.
All right, thank you. So looking at this year, 2024, and looking just first for fleet as an example, I see by 2027, we're going from 477,000 to 720. I'm sorry, first page, just going right from fleet. Right. Keeping it simple is my understanding. And in 4 years, we're going to have approximately $250,000 more available just to cover that, just from this, what you're describing as. And if not, if you can pull out your magic ball and crystal ball and be able to tell me approximately, like, what does that mean by 2027, looking at these numbers that we're going to be seeing 10, 20% property tax increase to try and handle those numbers. Like, and that's the smaller number, because you go down to 2027 on C for infrastructure, we're going from 187 to 515. And I'm not talking 10 years out, I'm just talking three years from this year. So that's where I'm just trying to envision this. I don't want to be the negative Nelly on this one, but I just, this is a lot of tax dollars increase, and I just don't want to see that either.
Council Rowland wants to be.
I want to ask a question for clarification of colleague, through you, Madam Mayor. Is Council talking about the levy increase or the taxation for household increase?
Yes, because what I just heard from our treasurer was it's going to be based on adding 100 houses or adding into average of subdivision that's gonna happen, that I just don't see 100 houses coming by 2027 in order to reduce this and that much of, and that's just where I'm oriented. I haven't been doing this long enough to see that kind of change, so it just brings me that level of concern just for our taxpayer. That's really what I'm at.
CEO McKinney.
So Madam Mayor, through Council Tilly, to give you some scope and context, 225 permits were issued this year. Now, this year, with the high interest rates and the tightening of the mortgage marketplace, we won't be anywhere near that draw for this calendar. If I look at that averaging over multiple years, what we have identified in the development charges calculation is between 150 to 175 household starts per annum for the 10-year period. And on average, once again, over the 10-year period, approximately 150,000 square feet of new industrial commercial institution. Those properties, when they are finished and occupied, will each be added to the overall assessment base of the corporation, and they'll be assessed by MPAC. Those will be new properties that will then pay property taxes to the corporation.
And if I may, we're not banking on it, but since aggregate went to the Supreme Court and lost the designation as farmland, they have to pay us back. So I'm saying like that. They have to pay us back to when we first, Christina would say it better than I.
Madam Mayor, the changes to the assessment of aggregate is for 2024 forward. However, we did appeal them in 2023, so when those appeals are settled, it will go back to 23. Other municipalities appealed earlier, and that's why they're going further, but ours will start in 23. But if I may add something to this discussion, for a colleague, I was reviewing our tax rate increase on residential properties. And over the past 10 years, we have seen on average a 3.3% increase in the taxes. A couple of years were higher, 1 year was 0. But on average over the 10 year, it's been about 3% a year that our tax rate has gone up. In that time, our levy has doubled. So 10 years ago, we were only collecting about $3.5 million in tax revenue, and now we're collecting $7 million. So there is a factor to the growth that it's not just a straight, I see this number, therefore my taxes have to double. I can't tell you today what that exact number is because I haven't done the forecast to see what the timing of our assessment growth is, but we are understanding that although our levy goes up, it may not actually impact the individual's tax.
Councilwoman.
Madam Mayor, I just want to caution council, though, I mean, all this growth is great, all this new levy is great, but with that comes increased population, increased demand, legacy costs. It's not just going to be the projects we want to do today, now suddenly we can afford them. There's ultimately a lot of other costs that we can anticipate right now. They're going to arise over the next 10 years. So it's not that we're going to win the lottery. We have to actually plan very carefully because a lot of this money will be needed for day-to-day operations.
That's right, and real advantage that we have is that we have a great MP and great MPPs, and when there's money, they call me. Like, I mean, I'm going to car to phone training last week because there's a grant, and I had to get Andrew involved right away. And because there's money, and they call me right away, as soon as that grant's available, I phone them. So, and we've gotten a lot of money over the last few years that we did not budget or expect. So we have to think positively, live realistically, I think act semi-conservative, but always be hopeful and ready to react. And Ms. Brooks, am I correct me again?
No, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to add to that. That is why my presentation highlighted that this is an aggressive campaign. And, it has some assumptions on growth targets. It has some assumptions on costs and factors on what the community will need within the next 2 years. That's also why we only adopted in principle and it's not a set in stone. And that is also why I have asked council to prioritize. So if there is something that you feel really is a priority, there are projects that may have to move out beyond the 10-year horizon to make them affordable. So that is why we have this discussion, to make sure that we're adaptive to the community needs and we can make the changes that council wants, and it's not, oh dear, tomorrow we need to spend $1 million and now we've got a big problem.
Council Rose.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is more of a general comment. So where I would see the priority is in things like health and safety, like emergency services, roads, and other items that really impact all of our tax base. So those would definitely be a priority for me, including the public works renovations that are happening. I'm very pleased that we are doing that. I know they're not as fun as parks and as other things, but it's really important that we have a really good functioning public works department, because especially with all this growth and with all the new roads and everything else that's coming online, their job is just going to get busier and busier. So, what I will say is, when I was reading the report about the twin ice pad, so I'm going to come to that one. I'm very pleased. I just heard CEO when they say that they're small C conservative in their numbers. Because I'm really hoping that the grant is not 50%. On behalf of the residents here, we're going to try into the next pad, because I think a $5.8 million debt for this is too much. There's a lot of residents who will never make use of the twin pad. I know there's lots of very awesome residents that will, but there's also a lot of really awesome residents that won't. And at $5.8 million, the debt for something that will get a lot of use from some residents, but not at all, but everybody has to pay for it, is, I think, it's not something I feel very comfortable with. Let me put it that way. So I am very uncomfortable with that aspect of this capital budget. I don't think it's going to necessarily stop me from going forward, but if it comes to the end of the road and the grant is only 50%, I will not be voting for it. I think we need to really look at something better for
I think we're hoping for a 30-30, which has been formula in the past, and that's what we're hoping for. But even if it is 50%, and we raise another $2 million from the public, and we only have 700,000, and we're almost at 30%. So let's look at all the ways to look at it. Council Moore.
Madam Mayor, since this discussion has focused on the ice use and ice services, I've had a lot of residents approach me. They want to revive discussion about a pool again, the aquatic center idea, and I know we talked about it in the previous council. I don't know if this council talked about it. I've had a lot of residents come to me and say, we're surrounded by water all around our numbers. A lot of people have pools, therefore a lot of children need swimming lessons. You yourself probably like it, so you got my kids system. So maybe it's something that we need to revisit. I mean, there are small communities I know in western parts of Ontario, like North Huron, for example, that have 5,000 people with a small pool. Maybe we have to revisit that. We're going to just focus on ice. And meeting people come to me and say, what about us? What about the non-ice users? What are we getting? And I don't have an argument for them right now. So maybe we need to consider that as well.
Ms. Ross.
Madam Mayor, through you, Councilor Roman, we have not forgotten about the pool. In fact, in the 10-year forecast, it does actually have the indoor pool needs and assessment study done again, so that we can look at where it might fit and if we need to acquire land or that sort of feasibility. And then I'm going to turn it over to
Senor McNeely.
So, Madam Mayor, just to build on what Treasurer Fox identified in response to Councilor Rowland. So the Leisure Services Master Plan that was presented to Council in the summer of 2022 identified that there was not a warrant or need demand to support a indoor pool in the 10-year period. Hence why it's shown in 2032 years out, that, there will be a revisit of the indoor need assessment. So similar to what we did for the ICE strategy back in 2019, 2020, there's the same kind of level of review posed in 2032. Obviously, township is larger by population at that point in time. There may be other facilities adjacent to North Dumfries that will either be open or in their bricks and mortar phase that may be able to service North Dumfries with some sort of arrangement between the township and those adjacent municipalities. That may be more cost effective than owning and operating our own. But this place marker, conscious decision, so that it wasn't forgotten. It's consistent with what was in the Leisure Services Master Plan. And that's essentially it.
Councillor Roman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to follow up, one thing I think about a lot is use pickleball. And I know that was not something that was ever asked for. We never wrote in asking for pickleball. And almost to play, I've seen him and his wife playing pickleball. It's one of those things that actually does serve part of our population that's currently not served. A lot of old people, a lot of seniors use those sort of facilities. We don't have any young people, I know. So it's a growing sport, but I just say it's not necessarily ice, right? So maybe look at not just ice and pooling. There's other things that we think about for the different various needs of our population. It's not just the focus on ice or trim pads or pools. Maybe we think about other facilities, maybe cricket fields, maybe more pickleball. I don't know. I'm just saying we need to think about all these different options that we're looking at 10 years out, because as our village continues to grow and such is going to grow, there's a lot of various cultures coming in that want different activity.
So, Madam Mayor, this is a follow-up to Councillor Roman's statements. Certainly, when we've been in both Wards 3 and 4 as part of our initial discussions with those respective communities and talking specifically about potential opportunities in their neighborhood parks, the idea of pickleball has been one aspect that has been flagged consistently. Now, we're talking outdoor, so put in brackets there, seasonal, for obvious reasons. But it is reflective of that growing desire. The Leisure Services Master Plan reinforced the principles of the township creating that indoor recreational multi-purpose space through the conversion of the ACC for a gymnasium type activity. There could be, based on the current ice surface, if that was to be retired and turned into a proper gymnasium surface, a minimum of 8 pickleball courts can fit within that footprint, 4 volleyball courts, 2 high school scale basketball courts. So it just gives you the order of magnitude of what could be created by that. And the study endorsed the principles of the need for such a facility for indoor recreational programming opportunities. We do not have the luxury of a high school in North Dumfries. And given the population, the placement of our population, and the proximity of other investments being undertaken by the respective school boards, there is no likelihood of a high school being built within North Dumfries or specifically the community of Ayr. Therefore, I can't even look at bridging an agreement with the school board to actually access that higher order gymnasium type space. And so that's why we've always talked about the adaptive reuse of the ACC upon the retirement of the ice surface, and then backstopped as a key conclusion, the demonstrated need in the Leisure Services Master.
Councillor Rose.
This is through me or just that. So one of the things, like we don't live in an environment, and a lot of us we'll go to different places for recreational purposes, swimming, skating, hockey, elsewhere, and it's So we do have, you know, that crossover, people just go where the sports are that they want. Is there, how much cooperation is there between the surrounding cities and townships when it comes to leisure activities so that we can make sure that, you know, even though we might not be able to do something directly in Air or in Brampton, that there's still the facilities that people want in their general area?
I believe CEO McNeely has this answer.
So Madam Mayor, through Council Williams, at staff to staff level, senior levels, we've had those discussions. The reality is, Cambridge is looking at building $115 million complex. An indoor recreation, multi-purpose programming space, library, and a swimming pool in southeast Cambridge. It actually is closer to the residents of Ward 4 than it is the vast majority of the population of the city of Cambridge proper. We've had those early discussions with my counterpart in the city of Cambridge. Firstly, Huron Park. So we're at Huron and Fisher Palmer. We've seen the early phases of Schlegel Park under construction. Primarily to date have been on outdoor recreation facilities and amenities. But the city, approximately 2 years ago, was successful in securing federal dollars. And they are now moving toward building, once again, an indoor pool and other indoor recreational amenities. That's the next phase of the development of Schlegel Park. That's 5 minutes north of the township boundary. So there are area amenities, and that's why I touched upon it. We have identified that in the business plan 3-year horizon for leisure commute services to bridge those discussions with adjacencies, to leverage programs and or facilities that are either open or will be open in the future. It was once again an idea that was flagged in the leisure services master plan as a way of delivering higher order recreation leisure pursuits for our residents, where we just don't have the critical mass at this point in time to be able to return on that investment. And so it is quite front and center with staff. I do believe there's opportunities looking at our partners in that regard.
Any more questions? Councilor Williams?
Madam Mayor, through you to CA, just as a follow-up, and so if we were looking at that Huron Park, that Schlegel Park area, as potential for our residents to use facilities there, are we also looking at some sort of trail structure to go up there? You know that the city of Kitchener has the multi-use trail that comes down from Kitchener to that, and it's going to continue south, I would assume, to Unity Road. Do we have any sort of long-term, like our 10-year capital, do we have any sort of planning as to how we can trail go from there to Roseville, and then from Roseville up to the city of Kitchener limits, so that our residents can actually bike or e-bike up to this new park?
So, Madam Mayor, through to Councilor Roman, there is nothing specific in the 10-year capital forecast. However, we have been looking at, I've been looking at trail connectivity through to Roseville. We have a major barrier, and that's the Highway 401 corridor. We also have limited development occurring in those areas, so it's not as easily as attractive to secure land as it is through the urban developments that are occurring in there, where we can make trail connections, land dedication, and the capital improvements undertaken through the planning process. If we're looking at, generally speaking, the Roseville to Air corridor, it will have to be in the form of either outright property acquisitions and or long-term leases that have to be negotiated with owners. The fundamental problem, however, is the physical barrier of the 300-foot wide Highway 401 corridor. And we have a pinch point at Northumberland Street. The existing bridge platform is very narrow. And I don't have a scheduled date from the Ministry of Transportation as to when that bridge itself will be widened or improved. However, doesn't mean there isn't merits in looking at that north-south connectivity. However, I don't have a solution.
So Sienna, really, I think you just mentioned one of my next briefs for the annual conference in the Ministry of Transportation on the bridge repair and the possibility of adding it and making it wider so we can use it as a connection to our trail network. So thank you for letting me know that you have done another brief. Councilor Rowland.
Madam Mayor, the only other thing I can think of on my long list of things over the last 10 years, one was, when we talked years ago, I think it's been the first term of council I was on, about how to connect the village more through trails. And one of the things we talked about at that time was how do we connect over the CP rail line, connecting Piper's Glen Park over to Piper Street and then Piper Street up to Hilltop. I know that we talked about some sort of trail plan at that time. I don't know how possible it is to go over the CP rail tracks or under the CP rail tracks, but I know that's something that I don't see in this 10-year capital project anymore. So I'm wondering if that's something that was dropped off or was never in there beginning.
So, Madam Mayor, the township was successful in acquiring for the sum of $1 about 14 hectares of land immediately south of the CP rail corridor when we approved 50 Butte Street. And those lands are part of the Nith Valley system. It almost brings us into downtown area. There's two intervening properties between called the southern terminus of this 14-hectare block township acquired and downtown area. We own obviously the lands associated with Piper Glen, Piper's Glen Park that frame Nith. There's one intervening piece of property between Piper's Glen and the rail trestle. We've had a pre-consultation meeting with current owner. We understand that there is some interest in this being marketed for redevelopment. And if that actually matures to a formal application, then there's the ability or opportunity for the township to look at acquiring land similar to what we did when we pursued the redevelopment of 50 Butte Street for the townhouse development. If we were successful, that would then provide the township land along the Nith River corridor from Piper's Glen Park to literally two properties short of the downtown. There is money in this 10-year capital forecast for trail development from Piper's Glen Park northerly through the GRCA land holding up to Greenfield Road West. If we were successful in acquiring a couple of those intermediary properties south of Piper's Glen, in theory, then we would be running toward Piper Street. Environmentally challenged lands. There are some, obviously floodplain is an issue, but so is the environmental sensitivity of pockets of some of those properties to the south, as well as significant influence of erosion and the continual recasting of the thread of the river itself within the valley.
Any further questions, Councilor Rowland?
The last thing I have, I think so, is I've noticed that since we developed the NBC property up here a lot more, especially in the summertime, there's been a lot of children on bicycles and skateboards going up and down Mallard Drive. At the same time, we've had an increased number of trucking companies on Mallard Drive. There's a lot of transport trucks going down to a large holding yard in Mallard Drive. Pretty dangerous to have all these moms with strollers and kids on bikes mixing with trucks. I'm just wondering, is there anything in the 10-year plan here that would allow for some sort of multi-use trail or wider sidewalk on the west side of Mallard Drive from Guthrie to Green Bay Road?
And who wants to take that? Sienna McNeely.
Madam Mayor, through Council Rowland. No, there's nothing specific in the 10-year forecast that has a wide platform for an off-road trail or something similar along Mallard. But we do have identified is, excuse me, potential off-road trail network, that if the Tampa Hall property was ever to be redeveloped, we have shown an off-road trail running on the east side of the rail corridor, providing that connectivity between Guthrie and Greenfield. And we've identified using the unopened road allowance of Charles Street from Guthrie through to 197-211 Northumberland. Council remembers when we talked about the concept plan for the redevelopment of 197-211. We have them prepare a block that would be dedicated to township, that would link Northumberland Street to the unopened Charles Street road allowance. The intent was to get people off of cyclists, off of Northumberland as early as we could, and to move them into an off-road network, literally bringing them to the NBCC. We may have to look at improvement on Millar if the off-road connectivity north of Guthrie doesn't materialize in a reasonable period of time.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, your question? Seeing none, can I have a motion, please, Councillor Lewis?
Just procedural question, do I start with my new motion for Riverside Park?
Just looking at the treasury confirming, so my understanding or my platform process would be yes, if there's an amendment to make, I would do Riverside Park, that would be the first. If successful, then there will be a slight amendment to the draft.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Tilly, that the 10-year capital forecast 2024-2033 be amended by the inclusion of the following at Riverside Park redevelopment in the year 2029 into the amount of $200,000.
Councillor Bowman.
Mayor, for clarification, I thought that the CEO said he's going to report to us in camera regarding this, so is it appropriate for us to be voting on this?
Do we want to defer this to that for the report? You can always be against the capital forecast this time. I know that two of the Ward 4 items are on to be discussed in the next meeting, so we'll be added to that as well. Okay, so you want to withdraw the motion or?
Procedurally, I need to withdraw my motion.
Well, there are a couple avenues. You're talking about adjusting your 10-year capital forecast. That can be done, and there could be subsequent adjustments or regimes depending on as details get worked through and maybe subsequent reports of closed session through a property acquisition or like. Doesn't mean necessarily you can't reflect your wish now in the capital forecast. However, if you're not comfortable with that, yes, you could adopt as it is, wait for the additional information that may come forward through various closed sessions, and then you'll be looking at some change to the capital forecast that you consider the provincial treasurer presumably is probably for the August review of your next version of the capital forecast. You're only looking at adoption principle this evening, as was established, suggesting could simply essentially defer consideration of that Riverside Park till your more detailed look in August. Just to make sure I have said something that the treasurer disagrees with, but don't forget the nod or the shake of the head. You have both options.
So you can withdraw, you can defer, and when did you say you bring it, February 9th? On the withdraw.
So then I would like to defer this motion till the August timeframe.
So it still has to be moved in that second.
So could simply be withdrawn.
Or you can withdraw.
All right, then I will withdraw the motion for now.
Okay, but please do get it.
And once more procedural question for the other motion. There's a bunch of blank lines. I can just ignore those.
That's correct. They're only there on the draft for your consideration if there were changes that council wish to make. So absent that, there's no checkbox or addition there. That's simple.
Thank you. Okay, now we're ready. Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Tilly, that the FIN.0 03-2024, 10-year capital forecast 2024 to 2033. That FIN report number 03-2024 be received. And I further to the report and discussion paper number 6, that council adopt in principle the draft 10-year capital forecast 2024-2033, reflecting the revised information associated with Schedule D facilities and Schedule F 2024 to 2023 reserve balance continuity estimates and debt principal summary to reflect the delivery time compliance proposed for the NDCC Twin Pad project and the ACC regional rehabilitation and adaptive reuse. And that the 10-year capital forecast 2024-2033 as amended be utilized to inform the Township of North Dumfries future financial capital budgets and ongoing planning and financial analysis.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Next is, 3 items of correspondence. And also the point 3 on there is the budget discussion, page number 5 for Cambridge Memorial Hospital. So,
Let me, Madam Mayor, just point that the public correspondence items are carried forward, will continue to be there for council's easy reference, but they have previously been received by. There's no action required on this.
okay, and, so there is the motion, for discussion paper number 5, Cambridge Memorial Hospital. Does anyone want to state anything, staff, or do you want me just to read the motion so we can see? Because not everybody has, does anyone have the copy of the motion? Okay, so the first part is that consideration of a grant to Cambridge Memorial Hospital Foundation Community Giving Funds Priority Equipment Program be deferred and be reduced for the reintroduced, yes.
So just, Madam Mayor, just on that, so what we've done is given council, so the discussion paper outlined 4 options for council's consideration. So what you have before you in a draft, the motion, is just those 4 options listed. So for council members, as you want to discuss the issue, and then you can select one of those 4 options or create, of course, your own if there's a different route you wish to go. It's there for the matters that are for council discussion, and then you can determine if there's any of those options.
Right, so that's what I was doing. So the first one is about, to defer and put in the 2025, budget deliberations. Item number 2 is that no grant be awarded for 2024 budget in support of Cambridge Memorial Hospital Giving Funds Priority Equipment Program. Number 3 is that an additional and blank amount be added to the 2024 operating budget for the purposes of a grant to the Cambridge Memorial Hospital Foundation, Community Giving Funds Priority Equipment. The final one is that an amount, blank, additional amount, blank, be added to the 2024 capital operating budget, sorry, not capital, and blank for each of the next blank number of years for the purpose of the Cambridge Memorial Hospital Foundation Community Giving. So one is deferred to 2025. One is no commitment. The third one is to make a one-time payment. And the fourth one is to make a commitment as we did previously, where we did $25,000 each year, for 20,000 for each year for 5 years, correct? Yes. So the discussion, folks, who's going to go ahead first? Go ahead, Councilor Thomas.
All right, so I think I'd be supportive of either 1 or 2, but I was also wondering if there is a way that we could also, perhaps use our social media to encourage residents to consider this charity for their own personal donations. So that'd be a question for you to see.
I believe the campaign is pretty heavy in those countries because we raised, what did we raise last time? We were asked to raise 200,000, we raised 2 point something million.
So the ask is 500,000, and the community group locally generated 2.3 million.
So it's a well-known charity within our countries, and I think people are aware the campaign is still going heavy in all as well. So, thoughts? Councilor Rowan.
Madam Mayor, so one concern I have is that Cambridge Memorial Hospital is only one of several hospitals that serve residents. I know, for example, my family, some members of my family were in the hospital in Woodstock. Other members have gone to Brantford. My doctor, Kitchener, works out of Grand River Hospital. So Cambridge Memorial Hospital is not necessarily the hospital for everybody in North Dumfries. So I'm just kind of concerned that we're just choosing one hospital out of 5 or 6 choices. So I'd be inclined to go with 1 or 2.
Council Jilly, yeah.
It's good. Thank you. I'm just looking at the addendum that we received today, and it's a different order, so I'm not gonna go by the options. I'm just looking as I see it there. The spontaneity of this this fundraising and the long-term thought of it. I'm not too sure at this point. Like we are, our family has entirely and exclusively used Cambridge Hospital for everything we've done for my entire life, including all my kids and everybody that I've known has died out of there. So I definitely would like to support it, but I do see Councilor Wilkins' point that was important, that hospital and many other people have done everything. It is a local hospital that has definitely supported our area. It's not to say that other hospitals don't. So financially, I have a question whether or not it is pertinent for us to put a high level of funds in there, and $25,000 is a reasonably high amount of funds per year to do that. And I know they have a need. I just don't know what their needs are there. And secondly, are their needs greater than the other or less than the other hospitals around it? We do make use of in our coverage. So I have some questions in my mind. I think honestly I'd like to defer this so I can put a little bit more thought into it before I was to do that. But that's just my opinion.
So if we deferred it, then, we're doing budget now, so I mean, so yeah, so are you saying no for this year?
No, I'm not saying no. I'm saying I would like to give it further thought is as to where, and it wasn't, actually, I was pretty much set to support, but Councilor Roman's point is very valid. You know, there are other hospitals around that we don't contribute to, as far as I know. It's a very valid point. So I don't want to hurt our relationship, specifically my family's relationship with Cambridge Memorial Hospital. But it's a valid point that you brought up, and so it's just making me think twice about it. That's all.
When they came to me and asked me, and I said, you know, you have to go to council. But I said, this is a tight deal. This is a tight deal for our residents. And I can't see us spending extra ourselves and giving away extra. It's a very tight deal for our residents. They're in trouble. The people are in trouble. And they understood that. That's why they didn't come for the mountain. They were ready to come with, I can't remember what they wanted to have money. And I just said, I can't do it. Can't do that to our people. So I agree with Councilor Rowan and Councilor Rowan, just 1 and 2. But we have to decide on 1 and 2, but I don't think this is the way I'm going. And I told them that thing one before they came. Councilor Rowan.
Then when you look at it, really option 1 and 2 are pretty much the same thing, because if we say no grants per 2024, Cambridge Hospital can still come to us next year.
Right.
And option number 1 is basically saying not this year, but maybe next year, so really we're virtually the same. One doesn't preclude the other.
Well, no, the other says that we will go into discussions in 2025, and if they don't approach us. So it says. Okay, so. The other thing is, and I hate saying this, because I was born in Cambridge Hospital, and hope I die from it. I donate monthly to the hospital. Is this what municipal taxes is for? This is property taxes. We just talked about Tim capital focus and concerned you about how we can meet the tax. How do we diversify the industry? And if you want to give, yeah, I do. but I don't expect them. I see the need, I see the demand, and they have a great team doing great things making money. But our taxpayers are tight. See, Council
And in that same way, when you need a service, you don't want it to not be there. Their transport has been significant, and even meeting with the minister about the dialysis machines, and there's obviously need that the region needs from Hampton Mullen Hospital, including ourselves, and so I see that as an important thing not to forget. Because if it was the only place available to us, then we want to be functional. And I think one of the things about our hospitals, and not to beat the system, but our hospitals are underfunded. And there are issues that we still don't have, with the wait times we have, it's a hard place. And I can see that. I understand that they're looking for some more support, and it's the community giving funds priority equipment foundation that is.
You're buying an MRI, so the fundraising for MRI.
Yeah. And that to me, again, if I needed that, I would hope, I hope I could contribute to that if I needed, but I never contributed to the mass amount of works that came from our hospital for my father and his heart attacks and other situations they went through, and my other parents, grandparents and other people. So I'm a little torn, to be honest, and that's why I'm not in a decision mode. I apologize and say that I don't have a strong enough opinion to go one way or another when I just said the same negative about the finances. So that's just where I currently stand, and I'm trying to work my way out of it.
So do you want to motion? Do you want to use motion now? Okay, motion that comes from Council Bowman, please.
So moved by myself, and second by Councilor Tilley. 6.11, discussion item number 5, Kenmore Hospital grant. There's 4 options, one of 3, just one that we.
So, do we read all 4 and then how to choose one?
So the mover, selects what action they're wishing to do. There are just the 4 options indicated for your selection. Simply pick the one that you wish to pursue. All right.
Madam Mayor, can you turn off your mic so another one?
So, it seems to me that in the discussion that the option is that no grant be awarded as part of the 2024 budget in support of the Kenmore Hospital Foundation Community Giving Funds Priority.
All those in favor? Carrie, thank you. All right. Next motion is the draft 2024 capital budget. Council Tilly, please.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Williams, that FIN 04-2024 updates draft 2024 capital budget, that FIN report 04-2024 be received, and that the draft 2024 budget be amended to the following. A, the purchase of a multi-modern module tandem truck be added in the amount of $478,800. And B, that a transfer from the Public Works rolling stock reserve in the amount of $478,800 be added to the fund for the purchase of the vehicle.
All those in favor? Carrie, thank you. Presentation and overview from CEO McNeely, Chief Administrative Officer regarding Department Business Plan 2024 to 2026 as contained in this draft 2024 budget. Michael, if you want to do the camera.
Definitely don't want to see that.
That's part.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to provide a brief overview of the Department of Business Plans. for the period of 24 to 2026, the 3-year time period. The respective department business plans did form part of the budget book that was posted and circulated in mid-December. Business plans have been prepared for each department. The business plan has been our past activity on a revolving 3-year period, and they're updated annually as part of the budget process. Business plans are designed to arrive from the corporate strategic plan and to bring it down to a department level. And the actions and activities affect the annual operating budgets, our 5-year staffing forecast, the annual capital budget, and also the 10-year capital forecast. The business plans themselves look at both internal as well as external factors that influence the corporation, how they affect our various departments, and they then translate into how we need to continually evolve and change our business plan to respond to those internal and external factors. Ideally, the business plan should help us better plan and be strategic looking forward. It allows us to deal with changing circumstances that arise. By having a multi-year focus, it does allow us to sequence our tasks, and where applicable, where an activity or a point of influence affects a series of departments, it allows for the integration between those departments so that they're working together in a coordinated and integrated fashion. For each department, we have identified some of the constraints or challenges that they're facing. To some extent, that influences our goals and deliverables. In some cases, we try and create goals and deliverables that try to either respond to or mitigate those constraints or challenges that have been identified. Once the business plan itself is adopted by council, it'll actually be posted on our corporate website for each department so that the public has the ability to assess, access the information, and monitor activity within the corporation. This chart shows each key function done by each department in terms of either operating or capital responsibilities. So now I'm going to drill down on each department. And I'll start with my office. Has been an activity since I first arrived here. It's looking at changing the culture of the corporation and positioning either the equipment, our procedures, or our staff mindsets as we continue to respond to changing circumstances. And in this case, it's the growing population, residential and non-residential, so that we can ensure that we're properly programming and accommodating that growth so that it doesn't overwhelm the corporation either from a financial perspective or a deficit in terms of available space to meet the growing demands on the community. We need to ensure that as we develop programs, that we are constantly looking at the lens of it being done in a financially sustainable fashion. It's environmentally responsible as we try and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and embrace the principles of the Transform WR. And obviously, we want to make sure that it hits the target audience in terms of its desired outcomes. We do need to continually assess the implications of our regional economic climate, both across Ontario, but also worldwide. I mentioned a few minutes ago in a separate presentation that, last year it was over 225,000 starts advanced. We won't even see a quarter of that in the calendar year 2024. Partly because, well, some of those units that are being built and will be actually occupied later this year, but also the influence of higher interest rates and its effect on people and their ability to take mortgages. Those are external factors that influence the corporation. And obviously, if we go into 2 or 3 years of that, then it will affect our capital forecast and our provision of certain road building projects and or new parks that are linked to certain new growth projects. We cannot work as an island. We have to be understanding the influence of the economy in which we reside. A key issue is dealing with climate change and the implementation of the Transform WR program. This affects our fleet, facilities and their retrofits, because those are our 2 key contributors to the emission of greenhouse gas emissions. But we also have to be cognizant that climate change is occurring, and it needs us then to respond in terms of changing our infrastructure, both looking forward in the future, but also how to retrofit existing systems to respond to the influences of climate change and things like these microbursting events at the moment. So we refer to that as hardening of our infrastructure. And the other is continuing changing legislative framework established by the province of Ontario and how it influences the township and other area municipalities as it relates to the whole land use planning regime. This chart just identifies that there are 5 direct reports in each of the departments that are under my coordination and day-to-day oversight. And of course, I am directly responsible to Township Council. I also have 5 areas of focus beyond dealing with the 5 department heads. I deal with the areas of corporate real estate, corporate communications, human resources, economic development, and corporate legal services. So some key goals or deliverables for my office. Working on a corporate communication strategy. This would actually be the first adopted document once presented to council. And it's looking at the realities of a changing landscape in the township. It's changing media influences, and I'll call it the nationalization of our media. As there's been more and more consolidation in the news media, the availability and ability to get key messages out. It's the changing role and function of social media. It is the reality of changes on day-to-day postage and the like. So how do we penetrate into our community, recognizing the urban rural context, but also recognizing different age and demographic profiles of our township? And so there's going to be some suggestions in terms of targeted type activities based on certain types of projects or undertakings from the municipality to try and create a more uniform approach, but a more consistent approach in terms of where people can find information about events, programs, services, future meetings that would unfold. The other thing that's been underway for about 18 months is the township, along with our 6 other local area municipalities and the region. We have been working with community members and key stakeholders to create a more appropriate approach, lens, in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. And so at a township level, it's taking that body of work and now shaping it into how we develop policy, programs, and services that are more embracing and inclusive to to ensure that no one's left behind. We've just spent about an hour and a half talking about the 10-year capital forecast and the order of magnitude of the spend on a whole host of projects in the 10-year period. Some of that has come out of individual technical reports, some of that has come out of the asset management plan. We have a long-term vision and framework. We have a financial strategy. However, it continues to be a challenge, and there's less ability to tap into senior levels of government funding to deliver some of those key projects in the longer term. So it is always a challenge, but it's also a goal that we need to be more responsive and look at alternative sources of funding and appropriate mechanisms to ensure that our township reserves are there to fund our long-term capital forecasts. We're a growing municipality. We've had an introduction of a whole series of asks in terms of new programming, principally in the leisure and recreation areas. There's a new cost center to the township, and it's how to contain costs and ensure that we can sustainably deliver these programs and services for the longer term. Coordinating all of our departments to make sure that we are properly recognizing and where appropriate, implementing the Transform WR objectives as it relates to lowering our greenhouse gas emissions. And as I mentioned, our fleet and facilities represent over 90% of our corporate GHG emissions. And so that's where the primary focus has been. We had in 2018 a strategic plan revitalization for the downtown. Significant portions of that plan have been implemented. And now it's an opportunity to refresh that vision and the strategic outcomes as we look out for the next 5-year time period, recognizing it is the cultural core of North Dumfries. I've shared with council, and there was a news release roughly 10 days ago. We've been successful in securing free Waterloo EDC in partnership with the townships of Wilmot, Woolwich, and Wellesley, access to approximately $2.6 million worth of funding over the next 3 years on a rural economic strategy, rural employment lands, marketing and branding, and business retention and expansion opportunities. So a good focus for each of the next 3 years is positioning North Dumfries an economic power center in the context of Waterloo region and rural Ontario in the context of Southwest Ontario. Working in our partnership with the Waterloo Wellington Community Futures Corporation, it's to work with some of our small business leaders to improve some of their skill sets so they can be more effective and dynamic, whether it's home-based businesses or bricks and mortar business, and bringing those workshops actually into North Dumfries so that it's more readily accessible to our small business owners and operators. The 2024 capital budget has funding set aside for internet service enhancements in the Millard Guthrie Business Park area. We were successful in having the 97-401 Business Park fully built with fiber to the address as part of the broader Ward 3, Ward 4 build-out program that's underway. We were not successful in bringing the Millard Guthrie Business Park into the mix. And so in the budget, we have money coming out of the broadband reserve. It's a financial incentive to find a partner to work with to extend fiber to the address in the Millard Business Park area. So moving on to the fire department. This is a hyphenated department because Chief Shawns has two primary roles. One is as fire chief. The other is as the community emergency management coordinator and working in my office as the delivery of emergency management plan. So key issues, we are, other than the chief, a strictly volunteer part-time fire department. We have a growing demand because of the nature of growth. And more importantly, the type of growth that's occurring is placing additional pressures on our fire prevention staff to undertake review of buildings, as well as to complete their annual building inspections as required by legislation. We have undertaken training of 4 personnel. They have all achieved their level 1, and so now can start rolling in the field to undertake inspections. But now it's to move them to the next level so that they can undertake some more of the complex buildings where today it's heavily reliant on one individual to undertake both reviews and inspections. Public education and outreach. Our best fire prevention is not to have a fire. And so for public education and engagement, the objective is to make people more aware of their surroundings and hopefully then reduce the risk of property loss or property or personal damage, as well as reducing our overall number of fire calls, the percentage of all responses. Continue to be worried and aware that as the community grows, there will be naturally an increase in our overall fire call volume. Every time Page Out is activated, it's taking our volunteers away from their place of work, from their own leisure activities, time with their family or the like. And so their time is precious. I worry and I continue to worry about the availability on a consistent basis to have the critical mass of volunteers available as their volume increases. There have been continual changes in the fire service over the last 5 to 8 years, adding new responsibilities to the fire department, including minimum standards. And it requires additional training, certification, equipment, and as equal important, the dedication of time of our volunteers to be able to respond to the circumstances associated with those changing legislative requirements. Roughly every second year, we go through a recruitment program, and it's always trying to ensure that we have the appropriate mix of individuals that give us that balance so that we have a daytime business day presence, as well as weekends, overnight, and that 7-day-a-week, 24-hour, 365 process. But also understanding that with that, we need to continually train and certify, but also prepare the next generation of fire officers, recognizing that we do have in our senior officer command members that are 2 to 3 years away from retirement. Emergency management and the frequency of emergency-related events. Our risk in this area is quite substantive. Partly attributed to the rail corridor, and 401 corridor, weather, whether it be freezing rain events, ice storms, flooding, tornadoes, violent windstorms, are all driving the need to elevate our emergency management plan training so that we're prepared accordingly. The vast majority of individuals that implement our emergency management plan, that is not the primary responsibility of one of the corporation. We have invested over the last 3 years, significant internal and external training to ensure that our staff are ready in their role as emergency management providers, so that when that call out occurs, they're able to respond. So it's making that part of our culture, understanding that it's a part of their larger job responsibilities. So when we look at the fire department emergency management, the 2024 key goals and deliverables, medical responses are over 60% of our, 50 to 60% of our overall run totals. 3 years ago, we adjusted our agreement with the province and the Waterloo EMS to truncate the range of calls that we would respond to ensure that we were responding where truly needed and where our expertise, time and response would create value. It has been very, very effective. We need to continually ensure that the deployment of fire resources are appropriately being used when dealing with medical calls, given the significance of the overall total of call-outs we get as a percentage of our annual calls for service. We may need to revisit how we deliver public education and the outreach campaign and the property inspections. We've started a program, but it may need to be continually retooled as the population demand continues to grow. We're obligated by July of this year to finalize the community risk assessment and present that to council for enactment. Work has been underway, and we will be presenting to council before July on our community risk assessment. I mentioned earlier that we have a handful of our senior officers that are approaching retirement. We have been working with a pool of officer candidates to run them through the NFPA 1021 program. It's a multi-year approach. It's quite a significant involvement of their time to undertake both curriculum and testing. But that's part of our succession planning. I mentioned the public education campaign and supporting materials related to fire safety. We're working toward certifications under NFPA 1035. That creates a standardization in terms of what that program would look like once enacted. We are in the process through the program committee looking at the appropriate updates to our emergency management plan. And that will be presented to council later this year for review and endorsement. At the end of this calendar year, current fire services agreement for the contract area with the city of Cambridge expires. And so we are looking at negotiations with the city on what that would look like as it go forward. We also provide fire services of the first response to adjacent municipalities, both the County of Brant as well as Langford Glenham, suppression and rescue services. Those agreements are long overdue for refreshing and updating. And so we'll be working with our counterparts in those two adjacent municipalities to present updated agreements for the consideration of Township Council for implementation in calendar year 2025. This is just a flow chart showing the fire department and the various platoons and core areas of emphasis within the rescue and suppression divisions, as well as fire prevention and training. Turning our attention to engineering and public works.
So, any questions for Councilor Rowland?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a quick question about the fire department emergency management. In the work plan, it talks about the discussion about moving the backup EOC to Longmont to NMD. I'm just wondering, is there any change in that now that we have the offices at 106 Will Thompson, are we gonna move the EOC to that building, or are we still gonna pursue, moving forward with New Dundee?
It's your, yeah.
So Madam Mayor, we wouldn't have the space to bring 20 or 30 people in a group setting at 106 Earl Thompson. So yes, the New Dundee facility remains to be our preferred location. That's our ultimate EOC location.
Thank you. Very nice.
So engineering and public works has two key areas of responsibility. Development engineering, which deals with the administration of site plans, as well as the subdivisions. And the other portfolio being an operations lens as it relates to our linear infrastructure system. So when we look at key issues or challenges, it's obviously, and we talked about this as part of our 10-year capital forecast. It's looking at this extensive network of roads, bridges, streetlights, sidewalks, and storm systems, and keeping them in a state of good repair. And we have to understand that as that infrastructure ages, the pressures upon it in terms of repair grow exponentially. We also have to look at the lens of trying to balance new infrastructure and make sure that that's not taking all of the dollars at the expense of the existing network. And so it's trying to create that balance to ensure that the infrastructure, old or new, is properly funded and maintained. We are, and we have been, working on training personnel, bringing equipment into our ownership for deployment to move us from strictly a maintenance perspective on our operations to being more proactive in terms of managing all aspects of our linear infrastructure network. I mentioned a few moments ago the influences of climate change. This is especially applicable in the context of our overall stormwater network, right? Our roadside ditches, storm sewers, and our stormwater management facilities. We need to harden our infrastructure to deal with and mitigate against the influences of climate change. So when we look at some key deliverables for the engineering and public works portfolio, we are looking at bringing to council in 2024 the approval of a roadside brushing policy. This is dealing with the vegetation along our, principally, not exclusively, but principally in our rural settlement and rural countryside areas, vegetation along our various roads, and what that standard of service would look like. We did, approximately 18 months ago, introduce a digital road program, and it's continuing to grow and build upon that. And it also, with the proper utilization, can assist and complement the infrastructure, state of the infrastructure report. We start seeing a significant number of repairs in a very, very small defined area. We have something wrong in that pocket. It might inform capital spend in an upcoming budget year ahead of what was shown in the state of the infrastructure report. So it has two purposes or goals, making sure that we're meeting the Ontario minimum maintenance standards for municipal highways, the appropriate reporting, but it also will help us deal with our capital forecasts. We're looking at developing and submitting to council a boulevard tree management plan. We are expending and have been expending a significant number of dollars each year on the planting of new trees, but this takes us to the next level, which actually looks at proper tree care and maintenance to create a more dynamic roadside boulevard. Council previously this year, well, last year, I apologize, in 2023, both on correspondence and delegations. There was the questions and queries related to parking on one side of the road within the community of Air. So we'll be making those recommendations to township council in that regard. And as part of the 2024 draft capital budget, we identified updating our engineering standards manual. And we will be leveraging the capacity of our development engineering consultant in that regard. We talked about climate adaptation and mitigation response as it relates to our infrastructure network. We've also talked about our obligations under Transform WR and our need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So it's looking at our corporate fleet and how can we be more dynamic and responsive going forward with future acquisition. Ensure we're doing our part in the overall reduction of GHG emissions. We also have in the draft 2024 capital budget a closeout for phase 2 of the last of the street lights converted to LED technology. And these are the what we refer to as the top post luminaires. And this would complete our entire network and have them all over to LED technology. And so this is just the context of our staff assigned to the Engineering and Public Works Department, understanding the split between development, engineering, and operations, and the composition of employees for each business area. Moving over to corporate services, this department embraces a whole series of responsibilities: bylaw enforcement, animal control, crossing guards, information technology, treasury, clerks. We have been and continue to work on better leveraging and growing our financial software and ensuring that it's appropriately integrated with other municipal functions as relates to maintenance of financial data. And the focus is now on recreation and the planning and building. And so with that, it's obviously ongoing training and leveraging these platforms. I just mentioned to you a moment ago the diversity of the portfolio of the corporate services department. And so it's where applicable and appropriate, ensuring that people are task trained across a series of portfolios to ensure that we can maintain this multifaceted approach. We are and have been working on corporate management system, both on paper and digital. And this is effectively archiving material, but it's also ensuring that it's easily accessible so that in 2 or 3 years' time, if something needs to be sourced, easily be tracked and brought forward. We're almost finished. We're in the closing weeks of dealing with the entire property files record system. And then we will be moving to the next area, which is dealing with old email accounts, all of the correspondence associated with old email accounts, and continuing with other corporate records. We are very dependent now on technology and software. It is in every facet of how we do business as a corporation. So we continue to look where there may be potential gaps. We look at how to improve and better leverage the technology so it's working for us, not against us. And with that, hoping to create additional capacity in one or more areas of our business responsibilities. Asset management is a continuing process. Council will remember in 2023, we undertook the review of our facilities. That's a key component to the next chapter of the asset management plan. So we've already done a major overhaul of our hard infrastructure systems. We're now looking at what we refer to as our soft, which is our parks, rolling stock, and our facilities. And we'll be reporting for July as to the second phase of the asset management component to ensure we're complying with the provincial regulations on long-term financial requirements for asset renewal on those soft services. We are going to be undertaking a major rebuild of our website to ensure that we can actually engage and have more feeding of information back and forth through our website to improve on customer service, AODA compliance, e-commerce opportunities. Our website operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Substantially longer, more available than the traditional municipal office. That's so making our website user-friendly and enhancing its ability provides greater opportunities for our residents to access information and or undertake transactional aspects. We've had a backyard hens pilot project operating in the background now for, I believe, 5 years. I think it's time to decide whether or not it's a pilot project and what its next steps should be. So we'll be reporting in that regard. And as we've been doing over the last 3 years, we've been going through a systematic review of some of our long-standing bylaws, reviewing them in the context of relevance, legislative changes, court proceedings and the like, and how responsive are they to the community in terms of the desired need and outcome. 2024, we're looking at our election sign bylaw, open air burning bylaw, and our salesperson, hawkers, and peddlers bylaw. And this is just the organizational chart for the Corporate Services Department, recognizing its very diverse range of responsibilities. And for information technology and animal control, there are no direct employees hired by the municipality, but we do those through contracted services to external service providers.
Councilor Bowman.
Yeah, Mayor, I just have a question for the CEO. At what point does this portfolio become unwieldy when we have to look at dividing it back out into 2 different departments, one finance and one clerks? You know that we tried initially to have works and human services together, and we ended up dividing those back out. I'm wondering what the other municipalities do. I know some municipalities have a clerk's department, some have a treasury department. I'm just wondering at what point in time are we looking at having this?
So certainly for the time being, when I mean time being, the next couple of years, 3 years, I think we're fine. We have identified in our 5-year staffing forecast, adding some new specialties within the corporate services portfolio to free up either time specifically as a director, so that she can migrate to more of her treasury responsibilities while providing overall coordination for the department. So we talked about IT coordinator and as a specific entity, understanding the growing needs and demands in the IT portfolio, and having that expertise to coordinate and work with our IT consultant. So it's now looking at some incremental changes to add additional capacity and strength. But the intent is for the foreseeable future to keep the consolidated department. It has proven to be successful to date. It has also allowed us to have certain individuals support multiple functions and or departments through this model. At an overall cost savings across the corporation. So I previously mentioned to council when we were going through some of our discussions on the corporate strategic plan that there are two departments that are going to be undergoing significant upheaval and change in the next 3 to 4 years. Leisure and community services is one of those two departments. This is largely driven by internal changes arising from the implementation of the leisure services master plan and some of the priorities and deliverables articulated in that plan, as well as the growing expectations of our residents to offer enhanced and expanded leisure and recreational direct delivery program. So one of our key issues and challenges is meeting those public expectations, recognizing our current structure and available staff to facilitate or coordinate leisure programming activities. The township has been successful over decades in having a group of core volunteers either deliver programs or assist in the delivery of community events and other similar initiatives. They're aging. They're not necessarily being replaced by the next generation. We are a small community. While we're growing, we continue to be a small community. We heavily rely on the goodwill, expertise, and generosity of our volunteers. We are going to need to make an effort to cultivate those relationships, provide support, which includes leadership type training, so that the next generation of community volunteers are available to help us with community events and festivals, potentially leisure programming opportunities. We have a room reservation software. It's used for both our indoor and outdoor space, as well as our contracts and setting up our voucher accounts for accounts payable for the rental of those spaces. We need to move it to the next level. And as part of the new website, we have the ability to look at things like when rooms are available. So people can actually then remotely will be able to look at where most slice of ice or available meeting space is available, and we'll be able to make those reservations along with the commerce transaction at their schedule, rather than having to worry about contact between 8:30 and 4:30 Monday to Friday. We have a series of memorandums of understanding or service level agreements with some user groups. The opportunity exists to continue to cultivate new opportunities and relationships and look at establishing MOUs. And these could be with either community groups and organizations, not-for-profit organizations, non-governmental organizations, so that not everything has to be delivered directly by the township. We may have a sponsor working with us. We may be providing some seed money, but the intent is to grow our reach and to look at alternative delivery models so that we're able to have enhanced opportunities to serve our residents of all ages, all abilities. We need to look at growing our capacity and our depth, both internally and externally, to meet the deliverables as articulated in the Leisure Services Master Plan. We have unique challenges in terms of delivering leisure programming, whether it be indoor or outdoor, in the rural countryside and our rural settlement areas. It's partly time distance, it's partly facilities, indoor or outdoor, and their availability, and it's also critical mass. What we are It is incumbent upon us to drill down further on this. And it's our intent to bring further discussion papers and strategies to the consideration of council. So when we look at our 24 key deliverables, it's our next step in the 5-year rollout schedule of the Leisure Services Master Plan and adopting and moving forward with the 24 program that council set out for us in August of 2022. We are looking at revisiting the Trails Master Plan and developing prioritization of initiatives. And there's both an operating as well as a capital lens to that. So items like the Roseville Air Trail connectivity that we mentioned a few minutes ago will be part of this broader discussion. We tabled with council in the latter part of 23 facilities life cycle report. So look at every single building we own and look at the major building components. But we also have the lens through there in terms of energy conservation practices and how to either contain costs and or reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So as a deliverable, as an example, in the 24 capital budget, we are changing out the overhead lights on the 2 ice surfaces at the AC and ACC and the NDCC and converting them over to LED technology. That's one small aspect. We've discussed at length through the month of January and about the NDCC Twin Pad project. That work continues in terms of those detailed drawings and the cost estimate. And we anticipate being put back before council in the March-April 2024 time period with the outcomes of that work. I mentioned a moment ago the challenges and issues associated with leisure and recreational programming in the rural settlements of the rural countryside. We will be working on a strategy. We will be running early discussions through our Leisure and Lifestyle Advisory Committee, and then we'll be bringing some recommendations to township council. There's something identified in the Leisure Services Master Plan. This was one of the actionable items that was in that August 2022 work plan. The council adopted and was specifically identified in the 24 plan. And this is the organization chart for the Leisure and Community Services Department. The bulk of our staff are more of an operations focus, dealing with care and maintenance of our facilities, as well as our outdoor recreational amenities and open space system. Development Services deals with the building division, so the administration of the Ontario Building Code and associated regulations, and the planning division as it relates to both management, review of development applications, and long-term horizon planning needs of the community. I mentioned 2 departments are going through significant upheaval over the next 3 to 4 years. Leisure Community Services is an internal change, largely driven by growing community expectations, as well as the Leisure Services Master Plan implementation. By contrast, Development Services is driven by external factors and specifically continuing change in terms of Planning Act or Planning Act related matters involving the land use approvals, review, and decision-making obligations. So, our key issues and challenges. We have a growth management model. We have an approved ROPA 6, Regional Official Plan Amendment number 6. Council in October, early November, filed with the minister further asks as it relates to additional residential and non-residential land beyond what was captured in ROPA 6. So we'll be working through what that new document looks like and how it influences North Dumfries. It's about future growth and where that growth will occur. With that, that informs networks, like servicing, parks and trail facilities, and what else. When does that growth occur? Etc. Then we have Bill 23. It's been approved. It has received royal assent. Certain aspects have not been proclaimed yet. And specifically, the dissolution of the region of Waterloo as an upper tier of planned responsibilities. And Bill 23 didn't focus exclusively on the region of Waterloo, it felt the effect of Niagara and Peel and Halton and York and Durham. I'm just focusing obviously on Waterloo because that's what influences what documents. With the full proclamation of Bill 23, we will inherit the regional official plan. And for a period of time, we're going to have two official plan documents administered by the township. Our local official plan and those portions of the regional official plan that be applicable to North Dumfries. We have in the capital budget for money set aside to create a new official plan. And with that, we also have the new challenges and responsibilities associated with being the approval authority for plans, subdivisions, condominiums, and park lot control. We are and have been working on process mapping and the means to streamline the review and approvals process. Because the Planning Act now requires the convening of public meetings and later the decision-making within certain prescribed time periods. So make those benchmark time periods as it relates to certain types of planning applications, say planning zoning bylaws being two examples. We actually have to start with funding money. We are meeting our timelines at present, but it is a challenge. And we are continuing to refine where we can make improvements to ensure that on a consistent basis we're meeting those benchmarks. With growth, it comes in different forms. Greenfield development, infill, redevelopment. Each has its own different sensitivities and pressures on the community. And we also have the ability to look at rounding out some of our rural settlements. Climate change. How do we lay out our new subdivisions to be more responsive in the context of climate change and the ability to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? We talked about 15-minute neighborhoods to remove the reliance on an automobile to get to places of employment or entertainment or recreation. But it's also how we create street blocks. It's the mix of uses, it's the orientation of the homes, it's the materials that go into those homes, it's creating greenscapes to help against shelter against wind or the heat of a hot summer day. These are part of our obligations under Transform WR, but they come down to not only official plan policies, but then how do we, as part of our decision making, as we approve new plans of subdivision or redevelopment applications, how are we greening our lens, making better decisions? So 24 goals and deliverables for the Development Services Department. Well, hopefully in the next month, there'll be some decisions rendered by the province of Ontario that will actually allow us to finalize our growth management model and understand what the landscape is. And then council will be able to place its fingerprints on what other changes you wish to see. Urban, rural, residential, non-residential. We're obviously going to be looking at finalizing the delegation process with the region and the province as it relates to subdivisions, condominiums, and park lot controls until 23 is obtained. The township has been working with the region and the 6 other area municipalities for the past, well, since August. And we have collectively identify transition opportunities to ensure that business continuity is maintained when those transfers occur, what training is required, what new licensing obligations are required. Province holds certain pieces of information. And right now, through the one window approach, it's the region that delivers those services of review on behalf of the province. We've identified what opportunities would we bring internally, where would we rely on consultants or other entities to assist in ensuring that those aspects are properly accounted for as part of that transition. Ancillary dwelling units. Township was actually out in front of the province of Ontario in 2018 by creating ancillary dwelling units. In 2022, province actually increased as of right the number of ancillary dwelling units that could be eligible within an urban service area, free for single, semi, and townhouse dwellings. We need to update our document to properly account for those aspects in the urban settled area. Province was silent as related to the countryside and rural settlements. We have current permissive policies and zoning permissions that allow that to occur. We have learned through our utilization of those standards that we could be looking at some tweaking to make them more responsive. And so we'll be returning to council in that regard. We have in the 24 capital budget, the last major cornerstone piece of software. And that's our property management program. That also has an appendix, which is an online building permit intake platform. And with the completion of that project, all our core technology systems will be in place. And it's important that we update our building dialogue. It's a little dated and stale. And this is the development services portfolio. The senior planner position, well funded in the 24 budget, is currently vacant, because we were waiting for the proclamation of Bill 23, and this would give us the added capacity to be able to expand responsibilities. So, Madam Mayor, that brings to a close an overview of the department business plans for each department in 3 years. Obviously, it is focused on 24. And I asked the council later tonight by resolution to adopt the principles of the 3-year business plan as a guidance document.
Is there any questions, comments, or comments? Very thorough, thank you, Sarah. And the motion, please, Councilor Williams.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Roman, that Department Business Plans 2024 to 2026, as contained within the draft 2024 budget, that the Department Business Plans 2024 to 2026 be adopted as guidance documents, and that the Department Business Plans 2024 to 2026 be posted to the township's website.
All those in favor? That's carried, thank you. And next we have the confirmatory bylaw, please, Councilor Chili.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Roman, that bylaw number 3459-24, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council on February 1st, 2024, be read the first, second, and third time, and finally be passed, signed, and sealed by mayor and acting clerk.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. And Councilor Nolan, adjournment, please.
Moved by myself, and seconded by Councilor Tilly, that whereas business before the special budget council meeting has been concluded at 8:34, be resolved in the agenda.
All those in favor? It's carried, thank you. And now, Madam Director, are there any comments from the press?